Coming up next on the Apostolic Connection.
When you can count the things that are not right with your life, when you can count the things that you've done wrong or had done to you that's been wrong, all God sees today, if you've got a hunger to be in His presence, hunger trumps ritual any day of the week. Hunger. Your hunger is of great importance. I know you've not been what you should be. I know you've not been a straight A student with God. But if you've got a hunger in your heart today, there's a God who cares.
You're Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the ending. You may be seated today. We give Him praise. Yes, we do. Come on, Pastor.
Let me tell you who Jesus is. He's the rock of all ages. He's the Alpha and the Omega. He's a heavenly Father. He's the beginning and the end. Much more than this, my friend. He's the Son of Man.
Jews were talking to Jesus, and they said, just who are you? You claim to be the Christ, yet you're greater than Abraham too. Jesus said, everything that you say is true. I'm greater than Abraham, but before there was an Abraham, I am the great I am. Let me tell you who Jesus is. Who is Jesus? He's the rock of all ages. He's the rock of all ages. He's the Alpha and Omega. He's the heavenly Father. The beginning and the end. Much more than this, my friend.
like to invite your attention this morning to 1 Samuel chapter 21 and verse number 1. Then came David to Nob, to Ahimelech the priest. And Ahimelech was afraid at the meeting of David, and said unto him, Why art thou alone, and no man with thee? And David said unto Ahimelech the priest, The king hath commanded me a business, and hath said unto me, Let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee, and what I have commanded thee. And I have appointed my servants to such and such a place. Now therefore, what is under thine hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in mine hand, or what there is present. And the priest answered David, and said, There is no common bread under mine hand, but there is hallowed bread, if the young men have kept themselves at least from women. And David answered the priest, and said unto him, Of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days, since I came out. And the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in a manner common, yea, though it were sacrificed or sanctified this day in the vessel. So the priest gave him hallowed bread, for there was no bread there but the shewbread that was taken from before the Lord, to be put hot in the day when it was taken away. Verse number 8, please. And David said unto Ahimelech, And is there not here under thine hand spear or sword? For I have neither brought my sword nor my weapons with me, because the king's business required haste. And the priest said, The sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom thou slewest in the valley of Elah, behold, it is here, wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If thou wilt take that, take it, for there is no other save that here. And David said, There is none like that, give it me. I want to preach a few moments today, church, on the simple statement, God cares. God cares. You may be seated. David had become the anointed king of Israel, although King Saul was still seated upon the throne. David was God's man, and everyone knew it. When Saul would hide from Goliath, David was the young shepherd boy that took a slingshot and brought down Goliath. Everyone knew that David was God's man. It began to spread until, as the custom was, young girls would meet King Saul as he would come back from battle. And young girls would sing of the glory of Saul. But on this particular day, things changed. Because the song that the young girls sang went like this. Saul has slain his thousands, but David has slain his tens of thousands. It was then that jealousy began to eat at Saul's spirit and Saul's heart like a cancer. It was then that Saul began to eye David with jealousy. Not only that, jealousy would so possess the mind of Saul that demonic spirits would dance upon Saul's mind, until one day, while David played his harp for Saul to hear, Saul reaches and picks up a spear and throws it at David. And David had to be quick and to dodge that spear, because it would have truly have taken David's life. Saul would raid David's house in the middle of the night with assassins to take the life of David. David knew that he was in trouble, but he really didn't realize just how far Saul would go to end his life. Jonathan spoke. Jonathan is Saul's son. And Jonathan spoke and tried to reason with his father one day about, why are you trying to take David's life? What is this that's driving you, Dad? Why are you so obsessed with ending the life of David? What wrong has David done? This advice from a son so enraged Saul that he picked up that same spear and threw it and would have taken the life of his own son. Jonathan meets David in a field and informs David that there's no place that's safe for you. Home is not safe for you. My father's house is no longer safe for you. Jerusalem is no longer a safe place for you. And David knows now, I've got to go on the run. David's, I believe it was his natural instinct at that time. At that time, the tabernacle was pitched in the city of Nob. There was a priest there by the name of Ahimelech. And I believe it was David's natural tendency to lead him to the house of God. Because if you've ever known God, you know that when trouble comes, that's the place that you want to go to, is the house of God. Oh, in the presence of the Lord, there is fullness of joy. I'm going to tell you something. One statement from God's Word answers all questions of your life. In the presence of the Lord, there is fullness of joy. In God's presence, troubles can vanish. In God's presence, things seem to be lined up. And nothing is as large as it appears when you get into the presence of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And would you clap your hands and give Him glory and honor here in the house today? You really don't realize until you study it out just how far David slipped. You see, sometimes trouble can drive people to lower themselves in their morals. It can lead them to act in ways that they would not normally act. So David is slipping. He is human, and he is slipping. He knows, I've got to get to the house of God. He knows, I've got to get to Nob, to the city of the priest. He knows, I've got to get into the house of God. And when he starts going to the house of God, he's hungry. His natural appetite, he's hungry. And so he comes to the house of God, and just like that, he finds the priest, Ahimelech, with 5 loaves of bread in his hand. But not just any loaves. Not just any loaves. These were holy loaves taken from off the table of shewbread, meant by God, and it's really important that you hang this, meant by God to be eaten by the high priest and by the priest. It was bread prepared for them. That was the ritual. It was the bread that was to be prepared for them. But you see, David is in need. David is hungry. David is hurting. David is running. And can I tell you something today? When it comes to God, hunger trumps ritual any time of the day. Can I tell you that your need for God today is of the greatest concern that God has this morning in your life? When you can count the things that are not right with your life, when you can count the things that you've done wrong or had done to you that's been wrong, all God sees today, if you've got a hunger to be in His presence, hunger trumps ritual any day of the week. Hunger. Your hunger is of great importance. I know you've not been what you should be. I know you've not been a straight A student with God. But if you've got a hunger in your heart today, there's a God who cares. Do you know that if I was asked to tell you the number one statement that's said to me in counseling sessions, if someone would say to me, tell me what is the number one repeated statement that is said to you when you counsel troubled, brokenhearted people, it is simply this. They start out by saying, no one cares. When I begin to ask about their family, they don't care. When I begin to ask you about this one, that one, they don't care. But I've got news for you. I'm representing a Lord today who cares. Who cares? He cares. Now just stop the story right there. Run it some 2,000 years. Jesus Christ is going through the cornfields on the Sabbath day. And His disciples get hungry. And His disciples reach up and break ears of corn off and begin to rub them in their hands to eat them. And the Pharisees got upset. And they said, Jesus, how come your men are breaking the law of the Sabbath day? It's not lawful for them to eat this and fix this on the Sabbath day. And you know what Jesus said? Have you never read what David did when he was hungry? Have you never read what David did when he was hungry? How he went into the house of God and how that the only bread there was shewbread to be offered up to the priest. But yet, because David was hungry, in my sight, God says, David's hunger trumped that ritual that the showbread ought to be there. So what I'm trying to get us to see today is your greatest asset that you have is that you're hungry for God to do something in your life. When you're trying to fix everything, that's not what you're satisfied. That's not what you're after. You're truly not after finances getting straightened out and marriage getting straightened out. Can I tell you what you're truly hungry for today is the ministry of the Lord Jesus Christ to come down and to touch you and to fill you with His Spirit and to do what only He can do. That's what you're hungry for. Your car will never satisfy you. Your reputation will never satisfy you. Only a relationship with God will satisfy your life. Why don't you give Him praise and honor right now? Now, I am not advocating today, and I want to tell you this. I am not advocating today that we sin, that we sin with no restraint. But I am telling you today, there are people that are sinning that are hungry. Because it's the relationship with God that's going to break the sin grip. David stands there. This is how far he fell. He stands there, and the man of God says, why are you by yourself? Oh, there's something up here. Why are you traveling by yourself? David said, the king sent me on an errand. I'm sorry. But that's a lie. I'm sorry. That's a lie. I'm not being blasphemed to our King David. The Bible's a book of reality. It's reality. He lied. Kip, he lied. He lied. He said the king's business requires haste. The king has sent me on a business. He lied. He's desperate. I'm not advocating that today. But I'm telling you, the only thing that'll break sin's grip is a relationship with God. And so he lied. He said, well, I'm on an errand for the king. And then he said, and he probably lied about this too. And he said, well, you got it in your hand. He said, well, this is holy bread. He said, but David starts talking about, well, it's really common in a way. Let me have something. And the priest says, well, only if y'all have kept yourself from women. He said, oh, we have. He probably lied about that too. He said, oh, yes, we have. And they handed it to him. And they're in the house of God. And it would be so important to God that God would have it recorded. And that even Jesus Christ, when trying to prove to the Pharisees that man's hunger trumps their Sabbath day rituals, would refer back to it. But David's not through yet. I believe today that I'm ministering to someone who's had some great victories in your life. But your past victories don't automatically guarantee you a present day victory. So David says to the man of God, he says, Ahimelech, I had to get out of town so quick for Saul that I don't have a spear or a sword. Do you have any kind of weapons here? And Ahimelech says, David, we have in the back, wrapped in an ephod. An ephod was a garment of praise. We have wrapped in the back the sword of Goliath. And you know what? When he said the sword of Goliath, I can just imagine, Sister Whitney, I can just imagine. You see, God has a way when we are experiencing present day troubles to give us flashbacks of past victories. I'm not a liar. I'm not a deceiver. I had the faith at one time to go out after Goliath with nothing but a slingshot in my hand. I love God so much that I defended the name of Jehovah and I went out after Goliath. And he said, there's nothing like it. And they brought out that sword. And I could see when they unwrapped it in the ephod, and that rung a bell to David. David had worn the ephod many times in praise and worship to God. But when they unwrapped that sword, possibly, I'm adding this point to it, possibly was the dried blood of Goliath still staining the sword, where David took Goliath's own sword and severed his head off his body. And David looks at that and he says, give me that sword. There is none like it. Ladies and gentlemen, today our need has driven us to God's house. And there's two things you're going to get in God's house this morning. That's bread of nourishment and a sword for defense. The things that walked in that are waiting on the front porch of your life to attack you when the last note on the keyboard is sounded today. The enemy better know that I'm walking out of this place this Sunday morning not like I walked in. I'm walking out with the sword of Goliath. I'm not going to be the same. I wonder if there's somebody here today that would like to walk out of this place different from what you walked in. I once was a Sunday school teacher. I once sang in the choir. I once had a testimony. You can still have it today. You can still have that today. Pastor, where is victory at? Pastor, where is victory at? Listen to me very closely. Your victory is right in your hand. Because God cares for you, no person living today or who has lived can hinder you today. Because God cares for you today, there is not enough devils in hell that can stop God from helping you this morning. So you are not helpless today. You need to understand that the answer is in your hand.
For more information about the Apostolic Connection or First Apostolic Church of Maryville, Tennessee, visit our website at factv.org.